Good evening. Today is Monday, March 15th. S&P 500 finally made new highs today. It tried to breach the 50 level to the upside a few times overnight, but failed and tested the 39.13 level on the futures today. And after that, it finally rallied around 45 points since that low at noon and made new highs at the end of the day. Russell and Dow Jones also made new highs, while Nasdaq was up over 1%, but still far off the highs. And Tesla was up 2% today as Elon Musk has changed his title at the company to Techno King of Tesla. And his chief financial officer, Zach Kirkhorn, will have the title of Master of Coin. The company didn't explain the meaning of the titles and didn't respond to comments, but I think Elon Musk always does some crazy stuff after something happens. And last week, his company is being sued because of his crazy tweets. And so what he does what he does best, starts provoking people again.
Well, we should learn from him. Apparently, he's doing something very correct, and he's made some tremendous innovations and improvements to everybody's life. So we should admire him.
He's a genius marketing and a brander and self-promoter. I think that's his biggest achievement.
He's also a technology genius. Anyway, Julius Kahn, in his books about the greatest gifts of humans, points out that the most important thing, the greatest contribution to human welfare, is the individual. And that someone like Elon Musk he's created trillions of dollars of wealth for other people. When they talk about the wealth tax, it's the people who are the most wealthy who have done the greatest contributions to human welfare. By having a wealth tax, they're taxing, they're trying to bring down the top. And it's very, very destructive, because most people don't realize the reason that these people are so wealthy is they provide a little bit of happiness to a large number of people. Same way with the great athletes. You know, why does a great athlete receive $30 million a year in salary, aside from the fact that they have a fantastic television revenues? It's because there are a million people who get a buck or two of pleasure out of every time that these people play. And we should be very thankful to people like Elon Musk and try to learn a lot about him. I mean, how many things does he have to do to make the world better? Okay, go on.
Well, I have to quickly disagree with you on Elon Musk and Tesla. I don't think it's particularly making the world better, but that's a separate topic, because then we'll have issues with batteries and where does electricity come from. In China, most of the electricity comes from dirty coal. So electric cars often are just as dirty as your electricity, which is coal often. But that's a side note. And the stimulus checks are starting to be deposited today, but that didn't help GME or crypto today. GameStop stock was down 17% and trading around $213. And Bitcoin, after hitting new highs over 61,500, suddenly dropped 10% to trade under 55. And digital craze continues as non-fungible tokens now are being used to sell sneakers, and they're virtual sneakers that are not being made in reality. And they were sold today, released digitally and sold today, for example, for $3.1 million. And that doesn't even buy you a copyright. According to the Wall Street Journal, owning a non-fungible token does not mean you own the copyright to the asset, but all it gives you is bragging rights. So it's kind of interesting. When I was a child in Russia, we used to play with paper dolls and made paper dresses for them from scratch, from our own drawings. And now I see that some adults haven't outgrown that urge and have to play with virtual dolls on the computer, virtual clothing, virtual shoes, virtual wardrobe on the internet. On the health front, the Astra vaccine was suspended by a few more countries today, as Anthony Fauci on Sunday said that US could also experience another COVID surge as Europe has, because we're lifting the restrictions too soon. Biden is planning the biggest federal tax hike since 1993, which he wants to use to pay for infrastructure and climate, which I imagine means more tax credits to Elon Musk.
Leave Elon Musk alone. He started a whole new industry, and he's got a man. He's revolutionized the satellite business and the boring business. How many things must he do? And he has a firm that's created. What's the market value now? 560 billion. They don't bring the wealth of the value of a stock up to over $1 trillion unless they think it's worth it, and they think that the growth in the earnings will be such that eventually its book value will be above $1 trillion. So I mean,
the market cap is 700 billion right now around, and there is lots of competition to Tesla. I'm not denying he has created all of that stuff, but as of right now, every car company has an electric vehicle, and the jury is still out whether Tesla will be the runner or
the same could be
Volkswagen.
said about Apple. And by the way, it was Julian Simon that I was talking about, whose books on the improving state of society talks about the value of one innovator, one genius, and how the biggest boon to humanity is increases in population. But by the way, I think the Bitcoin is very copacetic to Soji. In other words, it broke through 50,000 and it was hovering around 54,000. It's sort of like the Soji level. It had to break the Soji level at 50,000, and then when it breaks it, it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop at 51 or 52. It went to 54, and then it hit 60,000. And a lot of times the stock market's like that. It breaks the Soji level at 50 and goes straight up to 60, as it did today. And I wouldn't be surprised if we might be hitting a turning point. Of course, the Fed, the FOMC is very bullish, and it was down about 50 points at the open at the last FOMC, and ended up down only about 20. Has about a serial correlation of minus 60%. So that's very bullish, but The European markets didn't follow along today. And anyway, I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the week we're having some problems. Here, if I had to make a prediction, I'd say, and this is very uncertain and not very probable, but I'd say down tomorrow, up Wednesday, and then down the rest of the week. I pay attention to this Soji level. I think it's very important. And I'd be careful on Bitcoin also now that it sort of, wouldn't be surprised if we see Bitcoin below 50,000, the way the Soji level works, going above it and going below it. Okay, continue. Oh, how can we let Dr. Cattle off? Everything he says is a belated love story to Hillary. He wrote her a love letter saying, you know, I love you and you're so healthy, and you know, your interview shows that you're very healthy, and then everything he did was to thank the president. And now again, he doesn't care if businesses are closed and if people's choices are curtailed, and if their happiness is curtailed. All he's concerned about supposedly is that, you know, that one additional person who will be killed, and there's no cost benefit analysis of how many lives will be lost on this front and that front. But of course, that's only the surface aspect of things. The foundation of what he says is anything that will increase progressivism, anything that will increase government control. There's not one iota of his communications, and he must spend about 100% of his time being interviewed, because he's interviewed about an average of about 4 people. In fact, we should try to interview him. He might be very surprised getting some. I used to. I once said that I wanted to interview Alan Greenspan because he's such a big faker, and I had a big thing where I found out that his thesis was a fake. I happened to be very friendly with Larry Ritter, who was his thesis advisor, and Larry Ritter challenged me to find 50 uses for 50 relations between baseball and the stock market. And he said if I did, he would tell me the truth about Alan Greenspan's thesis. And then I did come up with 50 relations. By the way, I was working for tomorrow. I have 10 relations of birds to the stock market. I'm studying birds. But anyway, so I sent Dr. Greenspan turns out his thesis was just a compilation of his cockamamie newsletters for his business firm, and his business firm, you know, applied thing. You can imagine he was like Warren Buffett. He made Buffett seem like he was a growth addict, but he would look at the iron production and railroad railroad miles, and he had a firm called Townsend Greenspan. Anyway, I sent him a pair of sneakers, and I said I wanted to come to the Federal Reserve and interview him, but he sent them back. He said they weren't allowed to receive any emoluments from the public. Of course, as soon as he quit the firm, he got $1 million a speech, and
Maybe you should try now with digital sneakers. Maybe that's allowed.
well, I'm saying maybe Dr. Forsey would allow us to interview him. Especially, I think maybe you would have a better chance of interviewing him than I did. Okay, what else you have?
Well, today was a very woke day.
Thank you.
And according to the Wall Street Journal, half of the New Yorkers do not want Cuomo to resign, and only 35% think that he should, which I was surprised seeing the numbers. I thought he's going to be much less popular than that. And he's trying to deflect from his scandal, saying that we're very close to legalizing marijuana in New York. So he's trying to throw people some trinkets, so to speak, so that they will like him again.
Well, the woke aspect was that the president and Pataki both said that he shouldn't resign, that he should wait for the results of the study. And of course, if it was a Republican, they would have been a
Right.
pandemonium calling for his.
We believe all women unless it's against the Democrat. Then we have to investigate.
For Kavanaugh,
Right.
there was one person who remembered from 20 years ago, possibly, she didn't know who it was, that he might have taken part in a party inappropriately. Here we have 7 people, and
Right.
I think the latest thing must be that about his body, worrying about his body. I don't know what part of his body he was paying some particular
Thankfully, I
attention
didn't
to.
hear that. But the New York Magazine said that they have allegations of inappropriate behavior from 30 women, 30 women. And apparently that's not enough. So it just shows that pretty much everything in the country is so biased that there's no way of changing people's opinion. So the Democrats, 50% don't want him to resign. It doesn't matter, nursing homes, scandals, nothing really matters.
When you become dependent upon someone for welfare and
Yes.
for your food and housing and health, it's hard to go against your pocketbook. And he's obviously been very good. And now they're talking about a wealth tax. They don't realize that when you reduce taxes, it creates incentives and everybody works harder, and the total tax revenues increase because wealth is increased. So that's why I mentioned today supposedly the nonpartisan, quote, Congressional Budget Office will make a estimate as to what the wealth tax will generate, and it's failed everywhere else. But they're not allowed to use what they call dynamic scoring. They're not allowed to take account of the fact that if they reduce taxes, it will increase income, or if they increase taxes, that it will reduce income, that everybody will work harder and they'll try to hide their incomes.
Right, but to play devil's advocate, from my liberal friends who support wealth tax are saying that look at Elon Musk, or look at Amazon, Bezos. Their net worth is like what, 40, 60 billion dollars, depending on when you look and where the stock is trading. There is no way they're ever going to spend that money. So, and they can't really hide it because it's in US stocks. So why not make them pay some money to help something, welfare of the country? And what's your argument against that? They're not going to spend the money. The money is just sitting there unproductive. If you take the money from them, give to the poor people, they spend it.
Their efforts to create wealth and the raison d'etre of entrepreneurialism and the incentive to create things and to get wealthy creates tremendous material well-being for everyone else. And by preventing and reducing the incentives to become wealthy,
well, it's hard to argue that
you come from Russia, don't you? And
I am just playing devil's advocate, just for the record.
Okay.
But I try to argue it with my liberal friends, and they're saying, well, you're really not reducing the intent to any incentive, because the guy is still going to have 20 billion instead of 40. What, you wouldn't want to have 20 billion? Of course you would.
The incentive was to get there. An entrepreneur tries to create value and to become wealthier. And if once you get there, you take the money. We have to have a director of handicapping, a director of confiscation to take.
But we as a society do this, right? We have federal income tax. We already confiscate wealth of people. So we have a middle class family and we confiscate their wealth. In New York City, 50% of their wealth is confiscated on a yearly basis, constantly and continuously. So as opposed to Elon Musk and Bezos.
And the countries that have the lowest, one of the reasons that the Asian countries are doing so much better than us is because no one would dare try to take more than 10%, 12%. There's no capital gains tax in Hong Kong, and the average tax rate in China is 10%. It's probably, I'm sure the tax rate in Russia is only,
right, I think.
Yeah, and that gives people an incentive to try to improve things and to make money. By the way, I promised our listeners that I would tell them what this divergence between NASDAQ and the S&P would lead to.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a simple thing. Right now, we're in a situation where the S&P is up about 6%. NASDAQ is about unchanged from the beginning of the year. You have to realize that in almost any 60-day period, the likelihood of the stock market going up is very high. In fact, from 2011 to the present, there were 2,500 occasions, and the stock market on average in 60 days is up 55 points and is up 76% of the time. So now there are four different binary splits: stock market being up and NASDAQ down, stock market up and NASDAQ up, stock market down and NASDAQ up, or they're both down. And let's look at the occasions as we are in the present, where in the past 60 days, stock market's up and NASDAQ is down. Like, it's been that way for about 10 days. So in order to prevent overlap and to get independent observations, let's take the first time that, with no overlap, that S&P is up and NASDAQ is down. And there have only been 47 times in the last 11 years. And on average, 60 days later, the stock market's up 83% of the time, an average of about 100 points. So that compares to the previous one where the market's up 76% of the time and 55 points. So it's on those occasions, the stock market, as it, the current occasion where S&P is up and NASDAQ is down, it's the most it's a very relatively bullish scenario, but almost any scenario is bullish on a 60-day basis. And strangely, the most bullish thing of all of the four splits is when they're both down on a 60-day basis. Against popular wisdom, against the against trend following, and this is hard to believe, when they're both down on the next 60 days, the stock market on average up 178 points. Now during that period, the average S&P was about 1,500 to 2,000. So when they're both down on a 60-day basis, stock market on average goes up 10%. Now in the current situation, it only goes up about 6%. It's highly significant. That I was going to talk about the All-American letter of my grandfather Martin. We're running on. We'll save that. We'll save that for tomorrow. Have a lot of good things for tomorrow, and we'll have a proverb of the day from Tom Wiswell. You can lose a game because it's later than you think, and you can lose a game because it's earlier than you think. Time waits for no man or women. By the way, that my son was named after Jack Aubrey. His name is Aubrey. He's a great kid. And the main mantra that Jack Aubrey's always telling his best friend, Stephen Maturin, is the tide waits for no man. There's not a moment to lose. And he's always rushing to get things done. He made his hands practice their gunnery so that they could shoot their guns off in 40 seconds, whereas the French took about 3 minutes to take one shot, and that's why the English created the greatest peace for 50 years as they ruled the waves and they held off the French. But anyway, that's a good thing, that time waits for no man. You have time to make a trade is not when you're certain, when you have the weather gauge. Okay, that's, I had a lot of other things to today, but I don't want to, we shouldn't go over.
We digressed a little today, but.
Excuse me?
We have digressed a little bit today.
Well, in honor of the new high, I mean, this is a great day. We've been waiting for 35 days for a new high. I said I was going to talk about whether interruptus is very good for the stock market or bad, but now it's a little late. I didn't follow Tom Wiswell's guidelines, but it didn't set a new high for 60 days. It it got above the 39.50 level 3 or 4 times last week, and it failed. But it was just a question of time as to when it was going to set its new high. This is a great day for celebration. Anyone who's buying and holding and is doing, and the strange thing is that all the professors, the progressive professors are worth, those who've been there for 30, 40 years are all worth $3-5 million because they're forced to keep their 15% of their salaries in the TIAA fund, and if you hold the stock market for 30 years, your salary, your 15% of your average salary maybe in those days it was 75,000. When I was a assistant professor at Berkeley, I think my salary was 8,500, but you put 15% of $100,000 in for 30 years, and eventually in 30 years it will be worth $3 million. So all these professors are like the government employees at the CDC and the FDA, the ones who are very woke. They've been holding back all sorts of new drug applications because why? They don't have enough manpower. They can't protect themselves to actually check on the drug companies as if their checks have anything to do. Of course, I think the drug companies pay about 20% of the FDA salaries, but you can imagine what obstacles they would have put to the former president in trying to get the vaccines. If they didn't have an Operation Warp Speed, we still wouldn't have a vaccine. Okay, that's enough for today.
Sounds good. Thank you, Victor.
That's a day for celebration. It was a Soji day. I said that I always, when I say that's going to be a Soji day, I always say it in the 40s. I don't, all my pronouncements are predictions rather than, most people, when they talk about what the market's going to do, it's descriptive and it's something that's already happened.
Mm-hmm.
Patting themselves on the back. But invariably, if you look at my communications and guesses about what the stock market is, I said today, and when the stock market was 39.40, I said we're going to have. I asked Soji if he was going to have some Kona coffee, and whether he, when it broke the old highs, he was going to have ice cream. I don't know if probably someone who really enjoys Kona coffee wouldn't put. I put. I like to have the Kona coffee. I like it light. I'm not healthy enough to have it completely acidic. So, but in any case, I asked him if he was going to have it with sugar or milk. And sure enough, it went from 39.40 to 39.60 in about 5 minutes.
Yep.
The Soji level is very important, but we have to, I think we saw it in Bitcoin and have to worry about it on the way down now. Okay, thank you.